Hello, everybody. I'm Raul, and we're keeping real wrestling alive, and that is the subject for this talk today. So it's 2021. Happy New Year to everybody. And I think I want to make sure that people who are kind of new to us, or at least this channel, this podcast that we put out. So I want people to understand kind of what we're all about and why we're talking about keeping real wrestling alive. Why that is our motto, our creed, and actually where it comes from, right? So let's go ahead and get to that because we don't necessarily talk about that all the time. You might see it here and there from our some of our posts and stuff like that on social media, or even this. If you look on our YouTube channel trailer or our channel banner thing, you'll see "Keep Real Wrestling Alive." But what does that mean? I think that that subject actually is something that we talk about a lot, but we don't necessarily elaborate. Especially since if those of you who've been following a lot of these live streams, might hear us talk about or hear us argue about amateur wrestling, and you can't necessarily just mix that up with some jujitsu, and all of a sudden you're a catch wrestler because also amateur wrestling nowadays, like freestyle and folk style, they even though they have the root or their origin comes from catch wrestling, the rules that they've imposed upon themselves, right, has made them slowly evolve into something very different from their original form or the original like father style of the catch wrestling. So while they're great sports in themselves, they're a lot different from their origins, right? So that's why we have to say keep real wrestling alive, because we want to keep the granddaddy version or the father, or the origin version alive and intact as best we can. But where does keep real wrestling alive come from? Because I didn't make it up. I actually that was inspired by one of my coaches in catch wrestling, Billy Robinson. We don't always talk about Billy Robinson in particular, because I think nowadays he's been marketed so hard. So everyone who's like even shook his hand is like now a catch wrestler or something like that. So that's why we don't necessarily talk about it. But actually, oh, look. So this is the picture I always have behind me. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes not. This is actually, I don't know if you can kind of see, that's Billy Robinson, right? And here I am, right? So I've trained with him a lot, and also went to visit him where he lived in Arkansas before he passed away. So just know it's like I do have that connection, and I took very seriously my training with him. So I even went, directly to him, to learn in like a concentrated fashion. And so let's tell you the story about Keep Real Wrestling Alive, though. So another one of Billy's like really hardcore, like 20 years study type of student, his name is Osamu Matsunami, and he lives in Kyoto, and he's the head coach and the founder of Riley's Gym Kyoto. And so he was Billy Robinson's kind of like right-hand man in Japan while he was teaching there. And he really helped Billy a lot with all his day-to-day stuff. But he trained extensively with Billy there in Japan. But then he would also go to train with Roy Wood in Wigan. So he spent at least 20 years going back and forth between Japan and Wigan to train. And so Osamu also met, some of the great wrestlers that you don't really hear about, who aren't marketed so heavily, like a man who was considered like the best wrestler at Wigan. His name's Billy Joyce, or he's known as Billy Joyce, right? So I think it's really simple to just refer to him as Billy Joyce. But since Billy Joyce didn't go to Japan, he's not necessarily like the one that's marketed so much, but he's considered like better than Carl and Billy Robinson. But he wanted to stay in England, right? That was his choice, and that's totally fine. But that's one of the reasons why you don't know so much about him. But anyway, Osamu trained with all the greats and met all the greats from Wigan, and when he wanted to open up his own gym, both Billy Robinson and Roy Wood kind of blessed him, and they allowed him to call his gym Riley's Gym. Right? And that's basically how they referred to their own gym back in Wigan. Right? It wasn't called the Snake Pit at that time when Roy Wood and Billy Robinson and Billy Joyce and all of the other uh, Riley wrestlers were training, because they all trained under the coach whose name or who's called Billy Riley. Right? So that's why they referred to it simply as Riley's Gym. They allowed Osamu to call his gym Riley's Gym, so that can be, or you can think of that as actually the original like affiliate to Riley's, right? So nowadays a lot of people are referring themselves as, say, like Snake Pit or whatever. Or even Wigan is kind of reopened up and are calling themselves Snake Pit Wigan. But back in the day, I mean, the original gym, they just referred to it as Riley's Gym because Coach Billy Riley, and so that's why Osamu's gym is called Riley's Gym Kyoto. And the other thing on top of that is Billy Robinson wrote a letter to Osamu, and in that letter, at the end, he writes like "Keep real wrestling alive." Right. So I've seen that letter, and we post it from time to time, but now it's on his wall in the gym in Riley's Gym Kyoto. Right. So that was Billy's wish. That's Roy's wish. That's even Billy Wicks's wish. All the great old timers that I've spoken to and met, their wish is to keep real wrestling alive, but keep catch wrestling in the way that they understood it, the way they practiced it, and so that's what we're doing, and that's always been my goal, and we're going to continue doing that in 2021 and into the future. All right, so I just wanted to kind of give you that origin, and I think I'll just be saying it more and more in our videos. So those of you who are new, now you understand why that's like our slogan or our motto or whatever, and we'll just keep on reminding you of that. So hopefully those of you out there who are kind of like-minded and who really want to preserve this almost dying art, hopefully you can join us and just just help us by being a fan, or if you want to train, let's get you trained. So thank you for your support and all that. But I just want to let you know where this whole thing comes from. Last year, because of COVID and all that, we didn't have a tournament. I don't know if you know, I'm in Los Angeles, and so even right now, not at first, but right now, we're really a big COVID hotspot. So a lot of people are testing positive for the virus. Our hospitals are pretty full of COVID patients. I know, several people who are struggling with it. I know people who have died of it. So I think right now it is unethical to put people's lives at risk or people's health at risk to have an event here in Los Angeles. So I decided to hold off, and but hopefully pretty soon, it'll be safer to have events and stuff. Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people in California didn't, say a lot of gyms didn't shut down. They just covered the windows of their gym, and then people were training inside. I know several people who did that and tested positive for COVID. And so, yeah, we even have some UFC fighters struggling to not only once they test positive, like they got it pretty bad. They survived, but they're still struggling with the outcomes after they recover from the initial symptoms. They're still struggling to get back to training at the level that they were used to. So, people really got to take this seriously. In China, I know the people that I know so many people there in different cities doing fantastic. My student in China, Ming, she was able to win 4 MMA fights, and now she's like the considered number 1 in her weight class in MMA in China, because they took it more seriously. So anyway, let's go ahead and get back to what we're talking about. Let's go ahead and see some of your questions. Um, yeah, Sands 307. Yeah, catches the best. um, yeah, so yeah, that's the thing. So catch does okay. So this continuing from Sands. His next comment was, catch has some deadly control and insane submissions. Yes, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, because really it's all about control, and that's why catch wrestling is can be considered like a more of a martial style, or you can also use it for self defense. At least a lot of the principles for self defense, right? So, and that's why a lot of catch wrestling was incorporated into not only British but U.S. combatives training, especially like around World War One and stuff. You also had people like Earl Caddock train other soldiers, um, in the early 1900s. We also have Tom Jenkins, I believe, and but Earl Caddock was the one who I remember reading an interview about. So they interviewed him about him training soldiers for American soldiers, and one of the things he was talking about is, and I think I've referenced it a few times, is that uh, he can tell who's green, like quote unquote green, based on if they're trying to choke each other out. Right. So he kind of has to, he kind of speaks to the problem we have nowadays. I think a lot of people think that the choke is the end all be all and that you can always get it. But a lot of people are good at defending it. And a lot of times, if your wrestling ability is good, you're going to keep your head away from the person. Also, too, like what we're seeing is leg locks are really becoming trendy and popular. So people think that leg locks nowadays are the end all be all. But again, if your wrestling ability is great, you can keep your legs away from someone who's going to try to leg lock you, and you can pressure pass or smash pass past their legs. And like what we saw a few weeks ago now, there was that match between Kennedy Maciel, right? He's if you guys follow jiu-jitsu, his dad is really famous jiu-jitsu practitioner. They call him Cobrinha, and so Kennedy, he had a match against Gio Martinez, who is a big time 10th Planet practitioner, and so since I have experience training at both of these schools, right? I know Kennedy wouldn't, or it seems like Cobrinha definitely doesn't train the leg locks as heavily as a 10th Planet school would. So what you saw is in that match is that Kennedy was getting his legs caught, but he was doing his best to use wrist control, using pressure, staying on top, and he was able to get his legs back. He was able then to pass the legs of Gio. He wasn't necessarily able to capitalize on passing and staying on top and getting into like a pin position. But at least he was using some of these principles, and you see that even in like so some people who are like such huge fanatics of jiu-jitsu, they might not realize that Kennedy was kind of using a lot of wrestling principles to ultimately win that match. So there was no submission at the end of that match, but Kennedy was the decided winner of that match. But yeah, he pretty much stayed on top, used pressure, used wrist control, and was able to escape numerous leg lock attempts because Gio was really going for it. So you can see how these things work in not only in wrestling, but you will have some critics talk about like, oh, jiu-jitsu person can beat catch. Big fans of jiu-jitsu are talking about how much superior jiu-jitsu is to what we do. But then you see at what they would consider the highest level, so two black belts who are very well known using wrestling principles, and one guy who's using the most wrestling principles wins a match. So I think people just don't realize that like these differences. I think they all think, oh, it's all jujitsu, but it really it's not. It's not exactly. All right, so let's go ahead and get to another one of your questions. So Jones DR5S, freestyle and folk style wrestling mix. Jiu-jitsu is not catch wrestling. Mixing those arts would be submission grappling, or would closely resemble luta libre in Brasilia. Yeah, yeah, I think that's really a pretty good way to put it, because when you look at luta libre, they really there's really a de-emphasis on the pins, right? So there's no pins according to my understanding and what I've seen on video, and then the people I've spoken to, because I see your comments also. Like a lot of you guys are commenting about luta libre, and so I've looked into it more and more. And yeah, even though this is the way the history goes is like maybe like a catch wrestler went down to Brazil and then ended up developing luta libre. There was just a complete disregard for the pin. So then again, then the style evolves to something different, even though they're both kind of like no gi styles. And they're both have their goodness about them, right, as well. Because you see a lot of cool stuff coming out of luta libre as well, and especially since since I've been looking more and more into it, got a lot of great stuff there. But you see that they are different, and I think that's a really good comment from Jones, because yeah, it's like you'll see these different, and you've seen some people even claim to be doing catch wrestling, and then they're doing this mixing of these different styles. And yeah, I think it's best to just call those submission grappling, or even like some people call them like hybrid styles or whatever. So, but do you guys have a problem with that kind of definition? I think it's actually pretty apt, or it's like the appropriate terminology that you guys should be using for those styles. Because the thing that I like, my point of view would be like, if you're talking about, oh, I know some cat, and this I run into it even in training. Have because I teach at an MMA gym, and then I'll run into some of these other coaches who then say like, oh yeah, I know catch wrestling, and then when you wrestle or when you grapple with them, it's obvious they don't know the first thing about wrestling. And I've even trained some students who've trained with these other like coaches who claim to teach catch wrestling as well. And then the student doesn't know even some of the fundamental Nelson holds and stuff like that. So letting you know a little bit more of my personal experience, you'll see people claiming to know or do catch wrestling, or their hybrid style or their submission grappling style claims to have catch wrestling like baked in, or as part of it. But I would say, and it's my opinion, that the pure catch wrestling, or the closest you can get to like full on 100% catch wrestling, you'll probably be doing a lot better in your grappling, right? But you'll see, like, if like they always talk about like the jack of all trades is a master of none. I'd say that's probably fitting to this kind of submission grappling thing, where you're just like taking bits and pieces from all these different styles. Then you're not necessarily learning the philosophy, or you're not learning the entirety of the entire spirit of we say like the catch wrestling language, or the catch wrestling way of doing things. So then I think that's when you get like these things where it's like I've experienced, where it's like someone saying like, oh, my coach taught me catch wrestling, and then they don't even know what a quarter Nelson is, or a half Nelson, or or they don't know a sit out, or different things. So, but they sure know some kind of crazy like 100 move type submission, like 100 steps to get to one submission hold, right? So I think that's a problem, right? Then you have all these people claiming to do catch wrestling, and then they're going to be losing in matches, because if someone's resisting you, you're not going to be able to get from step one to step, I'm exaggerating, but like to step 100, because they're gonna block one of the 99 steps in between, right? So catch wrestling is definitely a much more straightforward style, and like it's better for controlling, because we know these things, like and we implement these different things, like the different Nelsons, I think in jiu-jitsu recently, I've been seeing more of an implementation of the three-quarter Nelson. And also what Gordon Ryan, he's doing the power half a lot, which in catch wrestling, you can call it the Nelson and bar, right? Because it is a Nelson with a bar across the back of the opponent's head. So your hand going across the back, that's like the bar, right? So, and then your other hand going underneath their armpit and clasping hands, that is the Nelson part. So it's Nelson and bar. But nowadays in wrestling, it's been shortened to just be called power half because you get tremendous leverage to push their head down. So power half, and you'll see, say Gordon Ryan referring to it as power half and all that, which is cool because he's not like making up some name and claiming to have invented that hold, right? It's old. All the stuff is like very, very old. So Sans 307. I wish we had a catch wrestling program where you live. Yep. I wish, or even was that old. Speaking of California, where I live, you have that old Beach Boys song where it's like they wish they could all be California girls, right? So I wish everyone could live near me, and we can all train together in Los Angeles. But yeah, we do have the online training programs. So you can go to our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com, and under CWA Academy, you can start training there, and maybe you can be the instructor, right? So at least you can be learning a lot of the fundamental techniques, and you would get a better understanding of the style. And if you want to teach later, that's up to you, but it'd be great just to help preserve the art, if you become a Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy student. Right. So keep on asking your questions. Definitely want to make this a little bit more free. So I kind of explained kind of like what we're about, what I'm about. I do, they're like I'm basically trying to keep to the original style as best as we know. And my knowledge, again, comes from the several original wrestlers that I've spent time with. I've even spoken directly with Billy Wicks before he passed away. And of course, at the beginning, we talked about Billy Robinson, and of course, Roy Wood. And we're working on some other project later to try to give you some kind of more interview stuff with some of these other people. So we'll keep that a secret for right now, but just to kind of get you guys interested into all the different things we're working on, especially for 2021. So of course, once COVID goes down or dies down, especially in the United States, then we'll have more events, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing. All right, so keep on asking questions, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit more about Billy Robinson, especially my time in Arkansas with him. He basically expressed to me the same thing that he probably expressed to Osamu Matsunami in Japan with his gym and wanting to keep real wrestling alive. That was his desire, and so you'll have people talking about the whole idea about chokes and stuff. So basically, the way Billy Robinson practiced, or Billy Robinson learned, Carl Gotch, or I like to call him Carl Istas because he wasn't related to, because that was his real name, and he wasn't related to Frank Gotch at all. But the way Frank Gotch, right, the way Farmer Burns, Roy Wood, Dick Cardinal, all these old time wrestlers, they weren't practicing with chokes, right? So they knew that they were the way catch wrestling was done professionally. That's the way they did it. You can totally, they would even refer to chokes in the old books as like something you can do for self-defense. Oh, I should have, maybe next time we'll talk about chokes specifically. But even Farmer Burns talks about like, oh yeah, you can use chokes for self-defense, but ultimately, if you really want to control somebody, you're going to use the wrestling way more over than trying to choke somebody. especially if you want to detain someone and like control them, bring them down to the ground, and immobilize them. You're not going to be doing it as effectively just by choking them. You want to be using wrestling to do that. So that's that. So that whole sentiment about keeping catch wrestling the way they understood it is what we're going to be continuing to do, and that's what we've always done. Anyway, but I kind of want to let people know who are more new to this channel or new to Catch Wrestling Alliance, because we've been getting a lot more messages from you guys, or more people have been discovering us. So I appreciate everyone reaching out, because like they see that what we do is different than what the other things that they've seen online. And I'm glad that you guys can see that. Right, and so thank you for reaching out and wanting to work with us. We really appreciate you. So just to reiterate, is that like we keep it to the way that the old timers who asked me in particular to keep it that way. That's what we're doing, right? And if you understand these types of wrestling principles very, very well, or catch wrestling principles, you're going to be successful not only in catch wrestling, but even in MMA, in no-gi jiu-jitsu. So like really there's a difference, and I'm glad you guys are seeing it, and I'm glad you guys are supporting this channel. I really appreciate it. All right, so I hope you guys have a good New Year. I think we'll go ahead, if no one asks questions, then we'll go ahead and cut it short. I just wanted to make sure that people really understood what we mean by keep real wrestling alive. That's basically it. It came from one of my coaches, Billy Robinson, and you can see here he is. He's right there in the photograph here. I should have put it up on the big screen, but I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't thinking right. But at least you can, if you're watching the YouTube video here, as opposed to listening to the podcast, I'm holding the picture here so you guys can see. There's several pictures of us, but I thought this one came out pretty nice. Yeah, so there we go. So I think we'll go ahead and keep this first one of the year a short one. I wanted to just let you guys know what we're all about. Feel free to leave any comments if there's anything in particular that you want to know about with regards to catch wrestling. Please, leave it in the comments. You can also, if you want to support us by becoming a member of this channel, we have tons of videos that you would gain access to if you become a member at the middle tier and up. You can also become what we call super student tier. So that means that you not only get access to all our extra videos, but you can get access to the Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy. So what you would do if you become a super student, then you would register on YouTube as a super student, and then you would contact me with your email address so I can enroll you into our online CWA Academy. So that's how it works. And but yeah, let me know any questions, any other topics you'd like to learn about. We're going to keep real wrestling alive and look for a lot of good, actually there's a bunch of good things that I didn't even mention that didn't cross my mind, but we're working on a lot of things for you this year. And so hopefully you stay with us. I really appreciate what you're doing. Everyone who's like really struggling to preserve this wonderful art appreciates everyone who likes it as well. All right. So thank you for watching, and then we'll see you next time.